It's Wednesday, October 28th, 2020. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we are reviewing the comic Isola. So I actually went and voted yesterday. Me and Emily went out to actually do the early voting in person. Mostly I voted in person because you're outdoors like 99% of the time. And considering all the trouble with mail-in ballots, I didn't want to risk anything about my vote being counted. And I wanted my vote to count during the results they're going to release almost immediately after the polls close.
I think I said this before, but you know, my mail-in ballot was already confirmed received because I mailed it so long ago. But I may just go vote in person, which is a thing you can legally do in New York. Even if you sent in a mail-in ballot, and what's supposed to happen is when they when they go to open the mail-in ballots, they'll see that I voted in person and throw it out. And if for some reason they make a mistake, there's a non-zero chance that I can legally vote twice. Why would I not do that?
It is amazing how different this is in every state, which is like just one of those things that's just wrong with America and people who didn't grow up here.
It's wrong with America, but it does provide a unique defense against election interference, which is a problem we are facing.
Yep. Like, it'd be really hard to hack the American election because every state is so radically different that, like, I literally don't know how voting works in most states.
If there's a centralized, well-designed voting system, you could just attack it directly. The surface area is one thing. Now the surface area is, okay, you have to attack 200 and something electoral votes worth of systems.
Yep. But also, in terms of like our voting, the biggest problem in America right now, for those of you who might be outside of this nightmare late capitalist hellscape, or at least adjacent to the late capitalist hellscape, because it's a global hellscape. But our election, one of the problems we face is that a lot of states, if you vote by mail, they're not even legally allowed to open those envelopes until the morning of the day of the election. They can't even get a head start on counting them. Like, nonsense like that is a problem in America. So anyway, we went to vote, and the amazing thing was we tried to vote on Sunday when it opened, and there was like a 4-hour line, so we bailed. We went yesterday, like near the end of the day, but before people actually got off work, to try to early vote like in the evening, but while people might still be busy. And there was a huge line, but it was actually only about a 2-hour wait, so we stayed in it. I have never in my life encountered a line that was longer than like 10 minutes to vote until this year.
Well, we know what the factors are, right? So factor one is obviously more enthusiasm. Factor two is the early voting in New York has 1/10 of the locations of the regular voting. So on Tuesday, election day, there are going to be 10 times as many places to go vote, right? Problem three, which you just described to me, is that when you go to vote when they're on election day, you're going to a specific place that knows who's coming. And they have the ballots ready because for that location, when you go to early vote, they're dealing with such a wider geographic area and different possible ballots. And since they don't know who's coming, they're printing the ballots on demand. So you have to go up to them and say, Mom in District X would number whatever, and then they print a ballot appropriate for where you live.
And that's a problem, especially in New York City, because, like, do you know how many congressional districts are within, like, a short walk of my apartment?
Yeah, I mean, I can walk, most people, I think, in the United States, right, to walk to a place represented by a different member of the Federal House of Representatives would be extremely arduous.
Some states just have one. Like,
yeah, I can take a subway and go through, like, a whole pile of them.
In fact, I did this one time. I took one of my Strava rides and I looked to see how many congressional representatives I passed through. It was 4 different congressional districts on that bike ride.
I mean, on my commute, there's like at least 3 or 4.
Yep.
Some significant number, right? It might even be more than that. I don't know.
Yeah, because the Maloney district actually goes across into part of Manhattan and part of Midtown. I'm actually still in that district longer than you might expect. But so we wait 2 hours. There's a long line. I'm confident based on who was in that line that 99.9% of the people are correctly voting for Joe Biden. Like, there were not Trump people in that line. There's only one part of New York, 2 parts of New York City that vote for Republicans. One of those parts is Staten Island, which fuck them. And the other part is like this one neighborhood in Brooklyn. It's the only one. It's kind of amazing. But I go in. Emily gets her ballot, goes to vote, because in New York, each ballot is serialized, so they have the list of like the number of people who voted, and they can serialize that too, the number of ballots that were handed out and then scanned. That's one of those like checks on the system. Like if those numbers mismatch, they need to do a manual count of the ballots themselves and figure out what happened. So I take my ballot that came out of this machine, and I go over to vote, and I fill out the first part of it. And then I flip it over because there's a second side. Second side is fucking blank.
This side too. Uh-oh.
So I go over to a voting person. I'm like, yeah, my ballot's broken. And she's like, oh, shit. She says, she literally goes, oh, shit. So, because now this causes a giant problem. Do you know how much paperwork they had to fill out because of this? To strike the ballot that I had from the record and then give me a new ballot?
People are worried about so-called voting fraud, right? It's like...
Yeah, right?
You got to get past some old lady who's working the polling station in Queens.
Who's probably been doing it for like 30 years.
To get one vote past them, right?
Yep. So I had to talk to...
It's really not easy.
I'm curious. So what's your guess on how many people I had to officially interact with to get a new ballot?
I mean, when I go to polling stations in the city, there's usually only... there'll be 2 people at the table of find your district because you don't know it for some reason. Then there's 2 people at the table of here's your ballot.
Yep. And there's always one person at the provisional ballot, like I need to sign an affidavit.
Then there's the person who's help you while you're voting person, and then there's the help you with the scanner and give you a sticker person.
Yep.
Right. So I mean, maybe 2 or 3.
5. I interacted with 5 people who each person had to take me to another person so I could explain what happened to me to both of them. And then the second person would take it from there and go over to another person who had a different function. And eventually we got to the person who's responsible for the machine that prints the ballots, which is in this big lockbox. And that person had to key a whole bunch of information into a tiny keypad on the outside of this box to make the machine print another ballot for me. And then he had to take my fucked up ballot and do a bunch of stuff with it somewhere.
All right.
And it all worked, and I voted.
Make sure it doesn't get used because, it's legal to say fill out the front half and just abstain on the back half. Right?
Yep, but there was no back half.
Yeah, someone could have scanned that ballot and, double voted or whatever. So.
Yep. So I voted for Joe Biden under the Working Party's family line, or Working Families Party line, because New York is weird.
Yep.
And otherwise straight Democrats, because they're the only party interested in governing. So I urge you, if you have not voted yet and you're an American who has the right to vote, go vote. Do what you need to do. Go do it.
If you have to skip, work and make some sacrifice somewhere, but if you're legally allowed to do it, do it.
Yeah, you know me. I won't stand in line at a Starbucks if there's more than one person in front of me. But I stood in that 2-fucking-hour line to vote in a state that literally doesn't matter. Because
I still think you could have waited until on Tuesday. I think the lines will be way shorter because even though enthusiasm is high still, and that will definitely increase.
But
lines,
enthusiastic people are more likely to vote early.
Right. People had all this opportunity to vote early. So those people aren't showing up Tuesday, and there's going to be 10 times as many locations to go to, and those locations won't have to print ballots on demand. They'll just have stacks of them ready for you.
Honestly, my main reason was one, if anything happens, like let's say I get hit by a bus before election day, I want to have voted before I get hit by that bus because the stakes are that high.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of people are posting on Twitter pretty much every possible inspirational story of someone voting despite hardship. I've seen 100-year-old person voting.
Yep.
I've seen dude with terminal illness.
I saw that dude. I saw that specific dude
voting. Right? It's like it's like someone like in the worst possible shape, right? Going out of their way to vote. And the idea is if that person can vote, and you're listening to this podcast. You can do it too. You're not. Hopefully, you're not terminally ill. If you're terminally ill, do not waste the rest of your short life listening to GeekNights.
Yeah, for sure.
What the fuck?
You can have someone drop an iPad into your coffin at that point. Like this is not the most important thing to be listening to.
If you have a cancer that's in a late stage, I'm so sorry for you, but. Why are you you're not going to live that much longer. Don't listen to
Watch, we're going to get an email that's like, it's the only thing keeping me going is GeekNights.
Go eat a delicious food or, talk to the people that are important to you or something.
Yeah, I guess what I would say is one thing you can't know about someone's circumstance, because we've gotten emails like that before. Like, that happens. there's someone out there where something is their thing, and that is the joy. So if you're that person, like, sure, like, I'd like to talk to you. Like, if you're that person, I feel like talking to us would be something you would want to do.
Short time you have left in your life wasting it talking to stupid old Rim. He's got nothing he can tell you.
But I'm saying, if you're already at the point to where you're listening to this and that's your thing at the end, then I will actually talk to you on the phone, like, if that's what you really want.
Sure.
But go vote first.
So today, Rim posts in a chat, right, that today he learned, there's that song,
Toreador.
Right. He learned the name of that song was not the name that we thought it was.
Yep,
right?
I always knew it as the Toreadora song my whole life.
That's what I knew it as well.
I kind of assumed it was called Toreador. I knew it was from Trinidad. I didn't fucking know anything else about it.
No,
it's not from Trinidad. It's from Carmen.
That's right. So
Nessun is from Trinidad. I was literally playing the trumpet solo in Nessun Dorma last night, and thus it was on my mind. Anyway.
Right. So I also, because Rim posted that, I also learned the name of the song wasn't the name I thought it was. Right. And then I'm like, I know that song. Everyone knows that fucking song. Right. And I said, what's it from? And I Google, I'm like, oh, it's from Carmen. Carmen is, I know, the name of an opera.
Yep.
Right? Have I seen Carmen? No. Do I know the story of it? Yes, because I read it on Wikipedia today. Right? I just knew it was a famous opera. And I knew that song was in it. And I said, I'm willing to bet this famous opera that I have never seen nor listened to probably contains other famous songs that I already know. It's like a guarantee, pretty much.
Well, that
right?
Everyone knows the William Tell overture, but then they don't know any of the other songs from Trinidad.
Sure, but it's like I'm basically sitting there thinking, I guarantee there are songs on the Carmen soundtrack, right, that I already know, 100% chance, at least one or two, right? But which songs are they? What? It's like there's so many songs it could be. Which ones is it, right? Let me go to Spotify and double click on Carmen and find out, right? Yeah. What is the first thing I hear within the literal first note? Do you know Carmen? Have you seen it? Because I haven't.
No, I have not actually seen it.
The literal first song of Carmen is and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even have to get to track fucking 2. Right?
Yeah, most of the operas I've seen are either terrible, long-winded Wagner that I never want to see again, or like Rossini stuff.
So the story of Carmen, at least based on the Cliff Note summary, doesn't seem very interesting.
You know what I can tell you? My advice on opera is very simple. Never choose which opera to see if you haven't seen a lot of opera based on what plot sounds good. Choose the opera based on the songs you like that might be in that opera. Because the best operas have the dumbest plots.
Yeah, so Carmen, I kept listening, and it was mostly just, opera sounds, right? And then another song comes, and I'm like, oh, here's the second one. Do you know which one it was?
Nope.
Do 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 do. And then the big one, right? Right? That's also fucking Carmen. So if the Metropolitan Opera somehow survives, which I imagine it will.
We were literally, you and I, planning to go on a double date to the opera right after PAX East.
I was like, I will go to an opera. It's been so many years. Which one will I go to? Well, Carmen moved itself up on the fucking list.
I was hoping for Trinidad, but I've never seen Carmen, so I'd be happy to go see it.
Obviously. But if the rich people prop up the opera enough, right? I
feel like the opera ain't going to go bankrupt.
I don't think so either. If you have a Spotify or an Apple Music or whatever, go type in Carmen. And I didn't even finish this. I didn't even get past the second path here. There may be surprises that await here, right? Something else I learned is, who wrote Carmen, the opera, composer, whatever?
Yeah. So what are you learning? I'm actually pulling up some Wikipedias.
Yeah, you are. It's Georges Bizet, right?
Yeah, Bizet.
Bizet. Apparently, the interesting thing that I read is that this person who made this ridiculously famous opera, died after the whatever performance of it, and then it became famous afterwards.
That seems like it's not uncommon just in media in general.
Like, it didn't get performed that many times. Like, it wasn't a hit yet. And then they died, and then it became
I mean, Rocky Horror Picture Show was not really a hit when it came out.
It's still not a hit, really.
It's a cult classic.
I mean, it's basically people who care about movies have seen it, but in terms of like actual number of people who've actually seen it and know it, it's like people may know the name Rocky Horror Picture Show. Yeah, I know that name. That's the way I knew Carmen yesterday, right?
Yeah.
I know that's the name of an opera. I know that's the name of a thing, right? A movie or something, but they don't know it, right?
Yep.
And they probably know the time warp and don't know what it's from or that it's even from a thing.
Because I was thinking about the William Tell Overture. Most people only know that from like TV shows it was in, or like the Toreador song. That song, most people, if you like look it up on YouTube, almost all the comments are Five Nights at Freddy's kids being like, "Hey, it's the Five Nights at Freddy's song," and one old man is like, "No, it's the song that Martin Prince sings when he's in a cage in that episode of The Simpsons." So there's actually a lot of anime news, like a ton of it, and most of it is around the fact that Netflix had an infinite number of announcements related to anime and animation recently. We're not even going to be able to cover all of these.
Did all kinds of anime biz, and they did all the press releases for all their anime biz all at once in a big blomp. Right?
So the biggest one.
Anime Netflix news? Here you go.
And this is already during like this platinum age of animation where I'm watching, like there is so much good animation out there and a ton of it is on Netflix. So I'm just watching it there. But the one you all probably care the most about, the one that's getting the most buzz, at least in my circles, is there's a manga, The Way of the Househusband.
Yeah, so when I first saw this news, I was slightly confused. I'm like, have we judged this poorly? Why are people excited? Because the one that we judged obviously was not this one, right?
Yeah.
We judged a anime, and because obviously this is not an anime yet, right? So it couldn't have been. I was like, that's why I was confused, right? I was like, because we're only judging anime. There's no way I could judge an anime that exists. Are they remaking it? Right? But the one we judged is the questionable, not good one, where the Yakuza boss forces some Yakuza to get sex change operations and become idols, right?
Yeah, that's not, that is not the show.
That is not this. This is the one where you see people posting online on Twitter, right? The JPEG of the single page of the manga where there are two Yakuza complimenting each other's dogs and then wanting to pet them.
Like, all right, your dog is so cute. Can I pet him?
Yeah, that's this one. This is going to be way good.
Yeah.
And it definitely, like an anime adaptation of that, how can that be bad? Right?
Yep, I feel like it's going to be really fun. I like it. Anytime that trope of like a monster or something dangerous ends up in a very like simple domestic normal role is just, that's a trope that I just really like. And this seems like it's going to be a good show. Netflix rarely seems to pick up stuff that's not good in this regard.
And they also do a good job of it, right? They're not going to do like a
Yeah, it won't be the those 90s OAVs like the Sanctuary OAV that we will never speak of again and never watch again.
Yeah. So also they announced the the last Wednesday episode we talked about Olympic whatever.
Oh
right?
yeah, Olympic Kiklos.
Right. Well, and we mentioned how the person who made the original manga of that was more famous for making Therme Rome, however you pronounce it. I don't know.
Therme Rome
guess
works.
What? Netflix is making the anime of Therme Rome. It's like, well, I guess I'll watch that instead of reading the manga. Thanks a lot.
Yep, especially considering how good Kiklos is.
Yeah, I mean, this will probably be a huge, probably even better, right? Because the Kiklos one is obviously a low budget situation. Right?
Yeah, but the low budget I think is enhancing how good it is for reasons
but
that
I think Therme Rome is a little less ridiculous, even though it bears some similarities. So
trucking right along from that, there's a kind of a bigger underpinning to these announcements. This is from about a week ago, but part of what's going on is that Netflix actually announced direct partnerships with Naz, Science Saru, MAPPA, and Studio Mir. And this is on the heels of announcing their partnerships with Production IG, which includes Bones. Netflix is kind of just taking over the Western anime market, and they're also making huge inroads into the actual anime production industry in Japan.
Yeah, it's basically, rather than the old model of Japan makes anime and then the Western Funimations, whatever, all those companies that went out of business, the Genions, whatever, pioneers,
Yep.
going and licensing those shows for release. Instead, we have basically the digital distributors, right? Just sitting on the companies being like, all right, we got a partnership now. Maybe we'll have some input on what you're making, right? It'll go both ways, but you make it comes, and it's ours already, right? We're in it from the start, before you even made the show. We're not licensing it after you made it or anything. We're going to make the show together, and we're going to you show it in Japan how you're going to show it, and we're going to show it on Netflix over here, right?
Yep.
Maybe Japan Netflix, I don't know what their TV in Japan, whatever. But
it's an exciting time.
There's no opportunity for a Crunchyroll to get in there. There's not going to be like negotiations or bids for licenses.
I don't think this bodes well for Funimation or for Crunchyroll in the long run, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know how it bodes for, like, will the licenses ever expire? Because is it even a license, right? They just have it forever. It's like, it's a Netflix show forever, the end, right?
Yep.
Will anyone get to put out DVDs and Blu-rays if they want? Is there a merch situation, right? Is Netflix going to come to the anime cons?
And it was interesting. I was thinking about, where am I watching like animation, not even just anime, but animation in general. And honestly, like 70% of all the animation I'm watching lately, like in the last 6 months, is on Netflix. And then like 10% Crunchyroll, 10% everything else combined.
Yep.
Meanwhile,
really interesting.
The one show I want to geek bite right now, a show that is not on any of those. The show is actually like on Funimation's platform, I think. we ended up watching it.
You got I hear some problems over there.
Got a little cough coming in.
Uh-oh, you weren't standing next to some maskless people in the voting line?
Thankfully, living in New York, 100% of the people in that line were like mega masked up.
Of course.
Because they won't let you in. Like, you see those videos in other states where like there's people without masks all over, like inside of... That really does not happen in New York City, except maybe in Staten Island.
I see people who might not wear the mask like when they're walking down the sidewalk alone or with someone.
But you see them like pull it up as soon as someone else appears on the street.
Right, but like if anyone who's going into a place or with a person or whatever, right, or go into a building or any, then no one is not wearing.
But when we judged anime, one of the animes we judged was a show called Deca-Dence, and it looked like a generic fighting show. Like, it might be fun. Maybe it's like, I don't know, Attack on Titan. But we basically...
Didn't we talk about this a little bit last week too, or last 2 weeks?
Yeah, we did.
Ago?
So I've actually seen some of it now. Because basically what happened was, I was going to ignore that show unless there was some buzz. There was some buzz. There was a lot of buzz.
Mm-hmm.
And
I heard
literally,
the buzz as well. Buzz.
Literally, yeah, I'm a busy little bee. Literally everyone who said anything about this show said the same thing. It's not what it looks like. Just watch it. 2 episodes in, you'll see why. And no one would spoil anything else about it. So I went, and turns out we accidentally have a Hulu account. So we watched 2 episodes on Hulu. And sure enough, it starts out, it's good. Without the twist, like if there was nothing special about this show, it actually started out pretty good. Like, it was a pretty solid anime. Actually, better than I expected. But the very end of episode 1, they show a weird scene, and then the episode ends. And all I can think is, wait, that was a weird scene. Explain that. And then I watched episode 2, and by the end of episode 2, what that scene is explained, and the show is not even close to what I thought it was about. This show is... you got to watch it.
All right.
That's all I'm going to say. Deca-Dence is a show that needs to be watched.
Maybe I got to pirate it. I don't know, because I don't have no Hulu, and I'm not going to switch my Netflix for Hulu anytime soon.
Yep. You could... I don't know. We'll figure out a way for you to watch it. I've only seen 2 episodes, but I am deeply intrigued. Like, the best way I can describe this is I'm watching that first episode, and I'm thinking, oh, wait, is this an Evangelion? Or is this going to be more like an Attack on Titan? Like, which direction is this conflict going to go? And then
watch Evangelion. I can watch that anytime.
But then it went Mad Max? For a brief moment, I was like, oh, Mad Max? That is an interesting play. Let's see. Like, that's an interesting strategy. Let's see how it turns out. And then it goes off the deep end.
All right. Well,
I think it is specifically up your alley personally.
Okay, maybe.
Based on what that scene looks like, the style that scene is in, this show is a Scott show in particular.
Okay, we'll see.
So, I have this laundry list.
100% out, though, before I start watching it.
I think it is already out. I think people have seen it to the end.
Oh, okay. All right.
So beyond that, other Netflix stuff, like we're just going to breeze over these. There's a Gorillaz animated movie coming on Netflix. There's the Pacific Rim anime that Netflix, I believe, is funding straight up. There is Blue-Eyed Samurai, which is an animated action series with a bunch of famous people I don't really know and a bunch of famous people I do know are all involved in it. This is like the all-star cast animated show. George Takei is even in it.
Okay.
We got, this is an old news. An old news from from earlier in October. I don't think we talked about it much. But Being Puppycat, season 2, where the show kind of goes for real, is on Netflix.
Yep, we didn't talk about that, but that did happen, yep.
Yeah, I feel like we talked about it, but we didn't talk about it on the show.
I think that's correct, yes.
Yep. And last, we actually have some non-anime follow-up with the manga. Remember a while back, we talked about the Utena manga that takes place after the revolution. Spoilers, the revolution happens at the end of Utena.
So we talked about that. But yeah, Chiyo Saito made another volume of Utena manga called Utena After the Revolution, which I presume takes place after the revolution.
I imagine it's Saved by the Bell, the college years.
It actually came out. It came out like earlier this month, but I didn't notice because I didn't receive my copy of it until like a couple days ago. But it is now in my hands, an English copy, a legitimate English copy of this manga. So if you're an Utena fan, I don't know if it's good or bad. I can't say.
But you know what it is? It is more canonical content for your moribund franchise.
Yeah, so I'm going to read it soon just to see what the deal is. You'll probably hear from me in 2 weeks about what it contains, some Geek Bite or something, or who knows. But yeah, it's now available. So if you want to read it, you should do that soon.
My caution to you, if you liked the Utena anime but have never read the manga, you absolutely have to read the rest of the manga first because the manga is very different from the anime.
Yeah, I've only read some of the original Utena
Black
manga.
Rose is not really canonically part of the manga. It's like a side story that's tacked on at the end.
Yeah, I don't know how much this new manga has to do with the old manga though versus it has to do with the anime.
I believe it just picks right up from the old manga, assuming Black Rose didn't actually happen.
I'll have to do some research. Maybe
I'm just going to read it because I've read the manga. Like, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Maybe I'll reread the complete old manga first and then... Because it's not that long. It's only a few volumes, right? The original manga?
Oh, yeah. It's not long at all. I have it. I could just, drop it off at your house if you want to read it.
It's not like a big 20-plus volume deal.
But the other thing I'll caution you is if you really like Utena, but you wanted, more lore or answers to burning questions, the manga does not provide that. The manga is Chiyo Saito telling the Chiyo Saito story, which is not the story that the anime tells. The anime goes in a very different direction for all the Ikuhara reasons we have discussed in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, things of the day. What do you got?
Got a very tiny thing of the day here, but it is very high quality, right? So what it is real simple. It is a TV commercial, and this TV commercial is, 15 seconds long? It's real short.
Yep.
And they're advertising a brand of sausage that you can eat. Basically, I think it's like Slim Jim that comes in a tube, right? But some other Japanese brand. But the commercial is a Fist of the North Star commercial.
It's pretty great.
It is therefore amazing. Kenshiro says, eat some sausagey. I don't know. It's not actually translated, but I'm going to pretend it says, you have already eaten sausage.
I only watched it once. I'm not going to play it again while I'm doing the show, but it sounded like he said something different. He said oh my, but he said something slightly different there. I couldn't tell if that was just...
You have already eaten sausage.
Yeah, I could not tell, and I don't want to play it again because we're literally live streaming the show, but I will listen to it again after.
The point is, for 15 seconds, you can watch this. This.
What I wonder is if I bite into one of these sausages, will they explode in a pile of gore and blood?
The enemy will expire.
This is a Twitter post. It's Patrick Macias. The first reply to his tweet is, quote, how much blood is there in those sausages and under how many megapascals of pressure? Biting into these has to be very risky.
I'm pretty sure your opponent will explode when you bite one. You wouldn't sell very many if the customers exploded. Or maybe you offer one to your opponent, like, that's like a peace offering, but then they explode.
Nah. So my thing of the day from late September, an infinite time in the past, is an official special music video. This happened every now and then over the years. Like, there's an official Escaflowne one at one point. This is an official Pokemon music video. So it feels like an AMV, but it is actually official, animated by Bones, to a song, Gotcha, Bump of Chicken. Don't worry too much about the lyrics. Do not worry too much about why this is called Bump of Chicken. I imagine it's like a bump of cocaine,
bumps, not chickens.
But a bump of chicken. But this is a phenomenal music video. The animation is fantastic. This will give you such just a gut punch of nostalgia for the entire Pokemon franchise, to the level of, if you didn't know, the movie Stand By Me, a classic of like Americana growing up movies, probably more important and more noteworthy than The Goonies for a lot of reasons in America. The movie Stand By Me is canonically in Pokemon Red, the original Pokemon.
That's true.
That is, in fact, true. And there is a scene in the very beginning. This music video starts with 4 boys walking on some train tracks about to go find some Pokemon.
Oh, no.
This music video is great. Judith showed it to us the other night. Like, she was like, hey, you got to watch this. And yeah, you all got to watch it. In the meta moment, I don't know. Stuck inside still. Nothing's changed in the last 48 hours.
Yeah, I don't know.
A listener suggested we should do the GeekNights Opera Club.
There have to be operas, and the problem with the opera club is that operas are not necessarily accessible to everyone.
There are recordings of operas. Like, I watched Goddard Damerung in person, but I watched the rest of the Ring Cycle on basically on tape.
Video, but like that's the other thing is like we're not qualified or knowledgeable to like comment on them. So
no, it would be naive commentary. We would just review the opera as an entertainment experience.
It had these 3 songs I remember, and because they're the famous songs, I don't remember the rest. Yep. I didn't understand what anyone was saying. I read the subtitles, and the story was stupid. That's going to be the comment.
Why did you make that terrible deal with the devil? What did you think was going to happen?
The book was better. But yeah, the book club book is still The Tale of Genji. I almost read it, but then I read these comic books we're about to talk about instead.
Yep. I was not thinking about reading it because I don't have time to read anything. Do you know how much shit I got to do in my day-to-day life?
You read these comic books.
Yeah, I read these comic books. Like, I only read the first volume. I didn't even get a time to read the second volume yet.
Oh, well, there's only 2 volumes that I'm aware of.
Yeah, so. Which is fine because the first volume is great. I got enough to go on with this.
Is there any other meta moment whatsoever?
Nothing really. Just follow us in all the places. Bug us if you don't have a link to our Discord. You can also use our GeekNights community forum, but kids mostly hang out in Discords these days.
Yep. Anyway, that's the end of the meta moment. Give me a meta moment to go get the comics off the shelf because I forgot to bring them to my desk.
All right. So, Isola. I haven't been following comics much lately because I've been doing a lot of other things. Like, most of what's occupying my brain time that is not like projects I'm working on are video games and board games and some technology things lately. So I've been reading comics. Didn't even know this was coming. But Isola has
I don't know how to pronounce it. Isola?
I'm going with Isola unless someone tells me otherwise.
Yeah.
An evil spell has been cast on the Queen of Mar, and her captain of the guard will do anything to reverse it. The only hope lies in an island half a world away, a place known in myth as Isola, the land of the dead. Gotham Academy creators Brenden, Fletcher, and Karl Kerschl reunite with a colorist and a letterer to make this thing come live. The funniest thing is the Amazon listing has a sentence at the end that just says, recommended for fans of Studio Ghibli and the works of Hayao Miyazaki.
Kinda.
Yeah, kinda. Not 100%. Like, that is an oddly specific recommendation to make. I guess I see where they're going with that, but it's really, if you're a fan of the Nausicaa manga, that's a better, like, recommendation.
Is definitely the closest to this.
Because if someone watched Totoro and then thinks they're going to read this, not the best fit, maybe.
No, not at all. So what's the deal here? So the creators of this are pretty interesting. I'd never heard of them before. And I looked them up, and you look at their credits, and their credits don't have any particular item right? That is like, wow, that's like an all-time great kind of
thing. Well, I
right?
recognized Karl Kerschl when I looked up his Wikipedia because I've seen him before at conventions.
Yeah. I mean, I know their name.
But I knew him as a DC guy. Like, I didn't really think beyond that.
Right. It's like, name for me one thing he did, right? It's like,
some DC stuff, but he won an Eisner in 2011.
Sure. But it's all this, these are people who are like seasoned professionals in the industry, but they don't have to their name, right? Like that, huge title that like everyone knows, right? It's like even people who do work in superhero stuff, right? Like a Frank Miller has like a Dark Knight Returns, like, oh, he's got, that's his thing, right?
A comic person might know, like, oh yeah, Gotham Academy or like Teen Titans Year One, but that doesn't break beyond the comic fan people.
Right, but like, they have these creators still have tremendous talent, tremendous skills, and they're just doing professional work for hire, right? So here they come with their own story, right? A brand new property, a unique thing, right? Published by Image, and it's like, whoa, look at that, right? Holy snap. So what the heck is Isola about, right? This thing that, these very talented, comic industry professionals did when they finally would make their own book instead of, just another superhero book, right? So the story here is like what Rim said. There is some kingdom you don't know, a queendom you don't know about, a country, a nation, and the queen of that nation, and this is not a spoiler because it's revealed on page like fucking 1, has been intentionally, unintentionally, somehow transformed into a tiger. Rawr, rawr, right? And the Queen's Guard, the number one guard of the Queen, so basically like the equivalent of Oscar from Rosa Versailles, same job, right? Royal Guard, the only one person, the chief Royal Guard person, is accompanying the tiger on a journey. So they're running away, and trying to keep the queen alive, which is sometimes easy because the queen is a tiger.
Sometimes difficult because the world is terrifyingly dangerous.
And because the queen is a tiger.
Yep.
And they're like hunters. And some people seem to know the queen is a tiger. Some people don't, right? Whatever.
Like one random person who shows up is like, oh, I know. I know. It's not clear how that person knows.
It's also a fantasy world full of magic. And also, there seems to be this terrible secret of space that is revealed very, very early on. And that there are, what do they call them? There's like a name for them.
Well, there's the idea of like who is going to be the in-between.
Sure, but no, there's these things called the Hallam, which are these birds. They look like ravens or crows, black birds of some kind.
Gigantic black birds.
They are enormous. We're talking like, bigger than dinosaur sized, right? Like could probably peck it like an Ava's face size. So they're out there, and early on they encounter one that is already deceased somehow.
And it's notable that the characters are like, I didn't know they could die.
Right. It's like, holy shit. And so it's like they're there as like even after, volume 2, right? It's like there's sort of like this looming, not present, but like you just know they exist in this world threat that sort of hovers over everything because they're mentioned often, right? They're always like Hallam this and Hallam that, right? Even though they're not there, we haven't that direct conflict of giant birds are coming to peck you right now. That hasn't happened, right? That would sort of make things end quickly.
Yep. But what is happening, like this, what I like about this comic is it starts in media res and uses proper nouns appropriately, and you start to figure out the deal. There's like an empire that appears to be collapsing. Like you encounter like the equivalent of the Roman legions of this empire are sort of like in disarray. Like things are starting to fall down. There's ruins. There's other kingdoms out there. There's these warrior clans, and I do appreciate media that has a lot of those kinds of proper nouns, but just trusts you to figure it out and like reveals the story organically instead of having like an origin story or a prelude to explain it all.
Well, it's not necessarily proper noun laden, right? Like sometimes it's just like, yeah, they're hunters, right? It's like it's just an appropriate word to describe the group. And the only proper nouns are the ones that for things that need proper nouns, names of countries, names of things that don't exist in the real world, right? Names of people, right?
Yeah.
They're not like,
there are a lot of incidental ones, like they bring up circles, like the circle a lot, and you sort of figure out what that really means as it goes on, like where this character came from.
But yeah, it's pretty much, journey of two people together and the difficulties they encounter along the way, and your discovery and their discovery, right, of like what the real deal is, right? Because like the queen clearly knows more than the guard does.
Yep, the queen is, and there's also the guard knows a lot, but the guard's origin is sort of mysterious, like how the guard came into this position. There's some romance angles. There's a lot going on.
And they encounter lots of, interesting figures like magical old man type of people that know more or less, right?
Yep.
And help or hinder their journey along the way. There's also the big mystery, right? Is this place they're going to, Isola, whatever, right? Is at sometimes you think Isola is actually just like, heaven is not a real place, right? They're going to or it's like the land of the dead. They're just going out to die somewhere appropriately, or, the journey that they're taking is the important part. There isn't the destination's not real, or it's a magical other land. It's not a real land. Or maybe it is a real land, And anytime people they meet along the way talk about it, they always talk ambiguously.
But I think the main reason to read this, like the plot is good, the characters are good, like the dialogue's all right, but it really focuses on visual storytelling, and the words the characters are saying are driving like the things that you can't drive visually because it's a fairly complex world. The visual storytelling is pretty phenomenal, and the creatures are beautiful. Like the pages are just beautiful reading this comic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what'll happen often is there's the parts of the story that are quite, literal, like this is happening, right? And then characters are often in dreams or hallucinations or visions of some kind. And it can get a little confusing, actually. Is this real? Is this not real?
It's almost like form is function. Like you, the reader, are disoriented by these rapid shifts of context, but the character that you're following is equally disoriented by them.
Mm-hmm. And also the things that are happening, it's like, it after the first, like, dreams, kind of, dream-ish sequence, right? You sort of realize, it doesn't matter if this part is literally happening or is in someone's mind or is a vision or who knows what it is, because all of it's real, right? They're not illusions of lies, right? They're visions of true things, right? It's like, oh, the dream is showing me something. They're learning things, right? They're not, being fooled by anyone except when they are, right? And then you find this in that case there is somebody, there's a visible adversary who is doing the fooling. So it's not, that part is not, confusing in any way.
But what's interesting too is that it actually moves pretty quick. Like I gave up trying to predict the pace of this almost immediately, because things that I thought they were like felt like in a comic would be a setup for later got resolved immediately. Other things lasted way longer than I expected, and even volume 1 ends in a very different place from what I expected one trade of a comic like this to end at.
Yeah, I think what the reason is that it originally came out as individual issues, right? So each of those issues actually has to have like stuff happen in it.
Yep.
And normally on a long journey like this, you'd have a lot of that, time spent traveling. They don't do any of that. They only giving you the they've arrived somewhere and do a thing at the place. They meet some people and do a thing at the place. The parts where things happen are the only parts, the way you're supposed to play like a tabletop RPG properly, right? And it's just like, when they're in a place, and then as they resolve whatever is happening there, and like the next page, which would be, I guess, the next issue. I don't know where the issue boundaries are because the trade puts all the covers at the end of the book. But it's like they're immediately at a new place, basically, right? There's not a lot of time spent maybe a page or two of like, we're walking on some cliff rocks and then we see a new place, right? And let's go there.
Yep.
Or,
but there's
we see a
definitely
house,
this.
let's go in it.
There's definitely the theme of like there was an empire that for various reasons is collapsing, and there's some sort of ecological catastrophe that may or may not be related to that. And there's a very deep transhuman theme the entire way so far.
Mm-hmm. It'll be like, oh, we're escaping some hunters. We escaped. There's some ruins. Let's go in the ruins, right? Like the next page.
Yep.
Much.
Oh, there's the head of like the Legion that was stationed there, but like the Empire doesn't appear to be paying them anymore, and like it's not really clear what's going on.
Yep. Something else that it needs to be mentioned, right, is the tiger is a queen, right? And the guard, right, is also at least appears to be someone who is female.
Yep.
Born female,
and they are
right?
clearly lovers. Clearly.
It appears to me the queen 100%, right, is like, all over the guard. I don't know. The guard may be clueless.
The guard might be a disaster in that sense. The guard may be clueless. I get the impression the queen like elevated the guard to be close to her, but propriety prevented her from exploring that relationship. And now they're on the road and one's a tiger, and we'll see where this goes.
Yeah, clearly the queen, chose this person to be their guard for like reasons, right? And those that we know what the reasons are, right?
Yep. I don't think there are further plot reasons there necessarily, because the plot stuff seems to revolve around the queen's brother and whatever the hell he was up to.
I don't know what he didn't make any sense, right?
Nope.
Because they don't reveal too much, right? They
well,
just
I like that too.
You.
Like, there's a scene where they're with the animal people in the woods or the swampy woods at one point, being vague here for a reason. But even then, like, it's not super clear to the characters or even to the reader exactly why that goes south in a hurry and they get kicked out again. And things are very confusing and moving very fast in that regard. It's very unclear what anyone wants for real, except the main character, the guard, just wants to turn the queen into a human again. And the queen seems to also want to become a human again, but also seems to maybe be becoming something different that might have been intended. Like, the plot might have been to make the queen different for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just don't know what the reason is. Right?
Exactly. I have no idea what anyone wants except the queen and the guard. No, everyone else is basically a mystery to me.
So something on the art that I can't ignore is the coloring in this book is very, very interesting in that when you look at most pages, there are some pages that are exceptions. Most pages are basically one or maybe two colors, right?
Yes.
Like you look at the whole page, all the panels on the whole. Here's a 2-page spread. Anyone who's watching the stream can maybe see this, right?
Yep.
It's a blue page, right? And then it's like, oh, I'll go over here. This is a purple page.
Yep.
Right. See, every single frame in the whole page is purple, right? And it's like, okay, here's a purple page with 2 blue frames.
And
right?
it definitely, the color scheme of any given layout definitely has ties to the perspective that you're seeing things from.
Is some orange pages, right? It's like no matter where you turn, and this holds true in volume 2 as well. Yep, holds true in volume 2 as well, right?
Yep.
Pretty much any page you turn to is 1, maybe 2 colors and different, the hue is the same, and all the other variables on color, saturation, etc., right, luminance are altered. But it'll be like almost like a solid hue for like a whole page or spreads.
Yep. And it's definitely tied to the mood of the characters or the context of the story in some capacity, or whether or not it's in the dream world. I'm not actually sure if there is a dream world or if that's more complicated.
Yep. You can even see the colors of the trades. Trade number 1 is the green trade, and trade number 2 is the purple trade, right? It's like, you don't have to be an artist to see, this, like, it's such like a bold, plain, like in your face artistic decision.
Mm-hmm.
And it really shows like the strength of the colorist. It's like, okay, color, you decided you're going to make all these 4 pages in a row all purple, right? But still everyone has to be able to tell who all the characters are and tell what all the objects are. But everything has to be purple, some shade of purple.
But
right?
I also
green on this page, or red, or yellow, right, or brown.
I enjoy the watching.
Gotta make it purple.
In that context, watching the queen as a tiger try to interact with the other characters and the nonverbal communication, the comic is mostly serious, significantly gory and violent. Like, this is a violent story. But it also at times is extremely funny. But that funniness is very brief and sort of punctuates everything else that's going on. It's mostly so far pretty grim.
Very small amounts of humor, right? It's there, but it's very tiny. Yep. It's like a dusting. You know?
Like there's a moment when a character who seems to be able to communicate better with the queen is like basically sitting with the queen by himself, and he's like, "So yeah, you're definitely completely in love with your guard, right?" And the queen reacts in an appropriately funny way. But then it gets into the transhumanist shall we say transhumanist nonsense 2 pages later.
Yeah. And that just also brings to mind just the facial expressions of every single character, right? Are like, because there's actually not too many words in a lot of parts of the book.
Which I appreciate. I like that.
It's like, comics in general became less wordy over time, back in the day.
I hit you, you little guy.
Right, of like the Silver Age, and even, where people would just say what was happening in the panel, right? Instead of just showing, right? And comic creators learn not to do that. But this goes even further towards, saying really the bare minimum and showing everything with the artwork. And so, not just the human facial expressions telling you pretty much everything, but to be able to draw the tiger face expressions.
Yep.
Right?
Without distorting the animal features, they still, like, you can tell when the queen is pissed.
Right. This is not like a furry situation, though I guess it might be.
Well,
but it's like the queen isn't. It's not like a tiger person. It's just a tiger. It's black with blue stripes.
There are characters you encounter who are sort of like mishmashes of human and animal traits, but they're not in a stereotypical furry art way, but more in a monstrous and unique style.
Yeah, this is Siegfried and Roy. Like, it's a tiger. It's not Tony the Tiger. It's a tiger. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yep. But I guess what I would say is, like, I don't want to really say much more about it because it's great. And if you want to read a comic, if you haven't been reading comics lately and you're okay for something that's a little bit violent but otherwise beautiful, this comic is really worth reading.
I'm pretty sure Saga is still on hiatus. So this is your American not superhero comic to read right now.
Yep. I'm deeply intrigued. I'm going to read volume 2 like tonight. Right?
Yeah, I presume volume 3 is coming out at some point.
Yeah.
I don't know when, but I'll pre-order it just like I got 1 and 2. I actually didn't pre-order 1. I found out about 1 afterwards, and then I pre-ordered 2.
I just bought it on Comixology and read it on my laptop.
Yeah, that seems like a good idea.
Yep.
So yeah, Isola, Isola. It is the comic to read right now.